Hello, everybody. Welcome to our panel discussion here on parenting this summer. My name is Greg Santoro. I am the Director of Education here at WHYY. I'm also a dad. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old at home. I don't know exactly what brought you to this discussion today, but I could probably guess. We did get some pretty stellar questions ahead of time that certainly spoke to my experience as a dad. Things about will my kid be okay after all this is over? Will they still be able to make friends? How much should I be concerned with academics over the summer? My kid's addicted to screens. How do I wean them off of it? And then my favorite question was just, how will I survive this with an exclamation point, question mark, afterwards? And certainly that experience is something I can relate to. I know that we've all been asked to do a lot in a very small space, and we all have other responsibilities as well. I don't think that we are going to solve the distance learning, quarantine, parenting, full-time job situation over the course of this hour. But hopefully we can give you something that you could take away to make your summer a little bit easier and more enriching for your kids, and at least you'll have some fellowship. So with that, I am going to introduce our panel. We have with us today Shannon Kemmer, who is a 3rd grade teacher at Martha Washington School in West Philadelphia in the Mill Creek section. We have Tamar Chansky, who is a therapist, psychologist who specializes in anxiety amongst kids and teens. We have Colleen Slotman, who works with me here at WHYY as our educational program specialist, working with younger kids. And then Lori Severino, who is a professor of education at Drexel University, specializing in literacy and special education. I'm going to ask you guys to just quickly introduce yourselves, tell us a little something about yourself and what you think your summer might be like. So I'm going to go over to Shannon first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Kemmer. I just ended 17 years of teaching with the School District of Philadelphia. Although I have taught 3rd grade primarily, I've had experience in grades kindergarten all the way up to 3rd. More recently, my specialty has been math and science. I am not quarantined with small children at home, and I pray for those who are, but I am an amateur DIYer, and I've used this quarantine time to plant a garden. I've done way more sewing than I ever thought I would be able to do, and a lot of home improvement projects. During the summertime, I'm normally a camp director, so I have a lot of free time on my hands.
All right, Laura, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Lori Severino. I am an assistant professor at Drexel University in the School of Education. Prior to joining Drexel almost 9 years ago, I was a special ed teacher in the public school system for 26 years. And again, my area of specialty is literacy, but especially for those kids that struggle with learning to read. That's where I love to train teachers on strategies that they can use in the classroom to help all kids learn to read. And my summer, I think we're going to be talking today about one of the programs that the school district is going to offer for K2. And I've been spending my summer developing content for that. So I'm looking forward to rest and relaxation maybe in August.
All right, Colleen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Colleen Slotman. I am the Educational Program Specialist at WHYY, and I've been here for almost 6 years now. I am also primarily I run literacy-based programs in West Philadelphia for the community, engaging parents alongside their children to kind of teach different ways of working together as a team, as one united front, as a family. In addition, I am a quarantined mom of 3. My oldest is 6. I have a 4-year-old and a soon-to-be 2-year-old in October. So I definitely feel your struggle, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. All right, Tamar.
I'm Tamar Chansky. I'm a psychologist specializing in anxiety and the prevention of anxiety in children, teens, adults, and couples. And I am the mom of two young adults who have been home with us since March. And so we were joking earlier about the issues that I'm facing are similar to those of parents with young kids. Kids are kids, right? How am I going to spend my summer? I think doing things like this, really trying to support people of all ages, summoning their flexibility and resilience and hope in making the shape of our near future of getting through this very difficult time. So I'm just very happy to be here with all of you.
Well, thank you. And we're all happy to be here with you. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in time a little bit to March and talk to Shannon a little bit about what it was like to transition from a normal everyday teacher to a distance learning teacher, but more importantly, what it was like for your kids. So can you just tell us a little bit about your kids at Martha Washington?
So the kids at Martha Washington are, and I may be biased, they are the best. I had a class of 30 that last day before we left, and they were in the art class. At 2:15, we got the announcement that the kids will be gone for 2 weeks because of the coronavirus in our area. So I had to scramble to get some packets because we were told that after 2 weeks that we will be back into the building. Well, 2 weeks turned into 3 weeks, and then 3 weeks turned into 4 weeks, and then we were done in-person learning for the year. It was very unique. To the teacher who was technologically savvy, it was an easier transition to those that had to learn the online platform and learn how to teach the kids all at the same time. And then we had the issue of getting the technology to the ones who needed it. At the beginning, it was very unknown what the coronavirus was all about, how it spread. So everyone was hesitant to actually go back into the school building. But once they were able to get their laptops and log on, it was like Christmas when you got to see your teacher and see her inside her home. I don't live at school. I have a house. So once we were able to get our online norms going and figure out to have everyone with the equipment that they needed to jump on, it was a hard transition, but our kids were able to realize. And we did a lot of, hey guys, this is for our best. We'll see each other after this is all over. A lot of checking in to make sure that they were doing well, not just with their online assignments, but how they were feeling with being away from the normal society.
And how were they doing? How do you think that they were faring this spring?
Well, the good thing about using the same program in class is that my kids were comfortable. Yes, they were only 8, but I was able to put it in a platform where they could click on the link at a certain time and get to where they needed to be. So I feel like the comfortability, because we used it in class, made the transition a lot easier.
Yeah.
Those who did show up every day, they got their work done. They were just happy to see each other and to talk for that hour at a time that we had our class, because you can't keep kids' attention too long.
What are you expecting when they return, when the second graders come back and you have a new crop of third graders? Are you expecting it to be, distance learning continuing aside? Are you expecting to see learning losses, emotional difficulties? Are they going to be just super excited to see each other? What are you expecting?
I expect that they will definitely be super excited to see each other, and they will want to give hugs and high fives and everything that we did before. But then kind of the reality of it is we still have to social distance when we're in the building. So I expect, of course, the summer slide to occur. That would have happened between the 2 months we would have had for summer anyway. So now take into consideration, we've been out of school for almost 6 months. If we open up in September, teachers are definitely going back with the mindset of, hey, let's see where our kids are coming in. Do we have to do remediation? We definitely have to rebuild our community and go back into our new norms with new routines.
We had a question from a parent that said, my daughter did not enjoy remote learning. You know, not one of your students, obviously.
Right.
Is it better to let her, quote, have the summer off and not worry about academics, or should I try to persuade her to brush up on schoolwork? And so my question, like, what do you think that, what should families be doing? You know, I think that certainly in my house, you know, my son too was not super psyched about distance learning. And there is this, I think, this notion that maybe he earned a bit of a break.
So when learning, you never take a break, but we could change the focus. So now, if we want you to read every day, I'm not saying you have to read a nonfiction book, grab a magazine or grab a graphic novel or read online sites like Get Epic. Your child could pick whatever topic they want, but they're still reading. Play math games at home. There's so many games you could just play with the dice or a deck of cards, or even games that have already been formatted. Take a nature walk, then write about it. My 2-year-old niece loves scavenger hunts. I have to send her mom a scavenger hunt every week. Like, we found a white rock. And I'm like, you found a white rock? I thought that would be difficult. But still keep a routine. It doesn't have to be as structured as sitting down at the table and reading for an hour, but create a routine that they know, oh, maybe 11 o'clock, I'll stop scrolling or being on my game and I'll just read a book.
Yeah.
There's a chart. Maybe if I read 5 books, we can have an ice cream party. And if I read 10 books, maybe we can go for pizza. So some type of incentive that's still fun, but keeping those same practices going. Like, your brain is a muscle. So we want to keep exercising that muscle.
Right, but some exercise, you know, it's not all pumping iron. You could be playing games too. Yeah.
Right, like you don't have to sit down at the table and write out your multiplication tables, but do a recipe. Recipes are full of math problems.
Yeah.
Create a shopping list. And then, well, if you have $5, how much can you buy with $5? So those little things will keep them thinking and keep them busy too.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to move over to, thank you for all of that. Don't go away because we're coming back to you for sure. Lori, from an academic perspective, what are sort of the expert concerns? I'm sure that there's probably been a ton of literature already generated about this. What are people concerned about?
Well, so I think Shannon mentioned it too, the summer slide, right? So that typically happens over the summer for kids that maybe aren't reading a lot or working, you know, doing math problems or doing those things that you can do at home. So does that get compounded because they've been out of school since March? And for those kids that didn't really like the online part, right, and kind of got tired of those of us adults that had to work online all day to understand that, right? So I think the concern is that there's a lot of ground to make up. And where is that going to fall? Is it going to fall in the first half of the next year? And then what happens? Is it an effect that just like a domino, it just keeps happening and that things get pushed further and further back? Kids are resilient. They bounce back. So I think if we stay positive and we lead the way, and Shannon had some great suggestions already, but I think if parents, oral language, we can't forget for those little ones, oral language is so important. Talk to your kids. Have new vocabulary, introduce them to words they haven't heard before. Just talking and having conversations helps tremendously. It builds their vocabulary. And then you can also read with your kids. They love to hear stories. They're going to love the interaction. So things that you can do that maybe now There might be some time over the summer where it's not so crazy, where you might have more time to do that. And the libraries are still closed. So then what, right? Where are you going to get your books? Shannon had a great suggestion. It doesn't solve that it's online piece, right? It's not something that you can hold, but Epic is free until the end of next year. They have phenomenal books on Epic. Just a plug for WHYY. They have great activities, games on the PBS Kids site. They have great games, videos that the kids can watch, and then you can have a discussion about those. They have great science information, math. So I think there's a lot that is out there that we just have to be a little more creative in how we're going to get that exposure to the kids over the summer. But certainly they should also have time to play, right? Because that's going to help them. And if they have access to a couple friends that they're allowed to hang out with, that's going to be helpful for them too.
So tell me about the ultimate summer learning adventure.
Yeah, so the ultimate summer learning adventure is something that the Read by Fourth campaign in Philadelphia brought a team together, led by Drexel. So we have a lot of expert and content area people that are putting this together. Folks from Drexel, folks from the Philadelphia Writing Project, first up for our preschool students, and also Teach Plus. And so we have science, math, reading, early literacy skills where they're learning phonemic awareness. So the oral language things and activities that will help them to develop their reading skills. So it's about an hour and a half of, again, online. Sorry that we can't get it any other way. But we've developed basically an online course for each day for pre-K, kindergarten, first and second grade. And again, there are themes. We bring in the content area experts that developed in a sequential based on the standards. We talk to the school district about what things the kids might have missed in the spring and what we can review in the summer to prepare them to be a little better, have some more background knowledge for the fall, so that maybe there's not as much summer slide. And it's free. It's available for kids. And the nice thing is, for those, I saw somebody had a question about long periods of time on the computer, right? We have purposefully put them in 15-minute increments. So if kids just want to come in and do math for 15 minutes, they can click on their grade level, do 15 minutes of activities, and it's interactive. So it's not just being spoken to or watching videos. There are activities in there that have them using those skills and moving things around on the screen, and it tells them whether they're right or wrong, and just encourages them to do different activities across all the content areas. And so if they want to do a half an hour, they can do 2 different segments, or they can they want to do all of them at one time, they can do that too. And they have 3 days a week for 6 weeks.
And this is in some ways in place of summer school, right? There's summer school for older kids in the school district of Philadelphia, but not for this age group.
Right, so this would be for the pre-K to second grade, just finished second grade, so going into third grade. So hopefully, Shannon, you'll hear in the fall when the kids come back that they were online doing some of those fun activities.
And full disclosure, WHYY is a partner in this too. And you can watch, there's content that's aligned to the ultimate learning adventure that you can watch on TV. We had some questions about special needs and distance learning, and that distance learning felt, I think, to many families to be a one-size-fits-all approach. And obviously, kids are not the same. What advice would you give to families who, kids might have IEPs, kids might have learning differences? How can they get the most out of a distance learning experience, particularly if it continues into the fall?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that parents can do if their child has an IEP is communicate with the school. There has to be a lot of communication, not only between the parent and the teacher, but the school district as a whole, because you need to So there were services that maybe some kids didn't get occupational therapy or, things where the speech therapy, where they have to come into the house or meet in person. Now, I think they figured out some speech therapy, that you could do some of that online, but really having that communication with the parents and the school to find out what are some of the ways that students with special needs can still get the supports they need. And so bringing in, the reading specialists and the special ed teachers and providing some time during the school day where even if they're online and if by chance they happen to still be online to start the school year, to have time during the day for your child to have either small group or individual time with the teacher to really work on those skills. Just like they would have had small group instruction during the school day, they still need to have that, even if it's in an online environment.
And you would recommend that families who feel they aren't getting that to advocate for it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. I'm going to move on to Colleen Slotman. And again, Lori, Shannon, if there's anything that Tamar, if there's anything that you guys want to jump in on any of these questions, feel free to do so. So Colleen, you've also been working on some games and activities that parents can participate in at home. Can you tell us a little bit about that and where they can find it?
Yeah. So we have been working on a downloadable guide for parents, and I just was trying to put it in the chat, and I will do my best to figure that out before the end of this meeting. But in that, we have different programs that we can offer you guys that will take your child a little bit away from the screen. So whether it be, as Shannon mentioned, a scavenger hunt, an activity that they can do featuring PBS Kids characters. There's a varying amount of activities in our downloadable activity guide that's in both English and Spanish. So parents, if you can download that and either print it out, or we'll have copies available if you need one, that is a huge resource that you can use. In addition, I'm sharing some PBS Kids information that can be visited on a website with different things that you can do throughout the summer, ways to get your kids away from the screen and balancing that all out, because yes, it is tricky. But I think the one main thing that I can encourage parents to do, and I find myself doing this with my children too, is if you can encourage them to be curious about the world around them, whether it be something as small as an ant. I know this might sound silly, but my kids can sit out front and look at ants for about 15 minutes. And that 15 minutes for me is huge. And then when they come in, I work my best to ask engaging questions where they can, try to come to conclusions on their own with things as, silly as ants. I find I'm laughing at myself, but yes,
I'm not certain, Colleen, but I think that your ants are more interesting.
So, but I think if you can encourage kids are naturally curious. So if you can really encourage them, they have so many questions, let them ask their questions and help. If you can help them come to their own conclusions about their questions, you'd be really surprised to see what they might say about things. So I think if you can let them lead the conversation, they're going to feel empowered. And granted, it doesn't always work this way. I'm also aware of that. But if you can, as much as you can, that would be a huge suggestion from me.
So one question, I'm going to pose this one to both you and Shannon, not Shannon the teacher maybe, but Shannon the camp counselor, or maybe both, camp director. So how do you get a kid off their butt, right? If there is, the question I think that came in was, my kid doesn't want to go outside. I want my kid to go outside. I remember being a kid who didn't always want to go outside. I have a kid who doesn't always want to go outside. How do you overcome that inertia?
With a little trickery. Maybe buy something that is you're only able to use outside. Bubbles, sidewalk chalk. And once they get a love of being outside. Maybe then they'll take a magnifying glass and well, not use the magnifying glass on the ants, but maybe use the magnifying glass to find ants, or look for different types of leaves that are outside. Just build a fort. I don't know if kids still climb trees. So the more that they are exposed to what can happen outside, then the more they may have a love of taking that initiative to go out.
And just to piggyback on that, I don't really always give them a choice. So we're going outside. And if I'm going outside right now, then you're coming with me. And it can be something as simple as gardening. We're not all like huge green thumbs. I have managed to keep plants alive during this quarantine, which is great. But I mean, just take them with you. And I know it's extremely difficult when you're working, but what I've found is if we go for a picnic, we're all taking a lunch break together and we'll go outside, or like we'll eat and then we'll go on a hike or something, or a walk around the block. And there are things that you can come up with to kind of engage them in a different way. Yes, I realize a walk around the block will get old after a little while, but take a different route, see what you can see. If you have a neighborhood group, I know someone in our neighborhood was a rock star and posted and said, hey, if you have a defining characteristic on your house, can you send it to me? And she put together an entire scavenger hunt for the neighborhood for kids to walk around and look for these types of things. And
wow, that is a rock star.
It's really awesome, because then you're like, the parents know where the street is. So it's like, we're going to go down this and this, and this is what we're going to look for. And everybody contributed. And it was really, really amazing to, do that with the kids. So it was a different fun way of getting your community engaged and, I don't know, forcing your children to go outside more or less.
I want to take a deep dive into our family's emotional health in a minute with Tamar. I know that probably that's what we've all been waiting for. But Colleen, real quick, I saw today that the Philadelphia Zoo is reopening. I think either this weekend or next weekend. What are some activities that you've come across that you think kids might be able to participate in this summer?
At the zoo, or just
no, anywhere. Are there things that you? I mean, I know you just named a bunch, but are there other things that you've come across that you think would be?
Yeah. So in the chat, I'm going to. There's a lot of different things going on. Granted, not all camps are happening. I know that for me, my children's camps were canceled as well. I'm sure Ms. Kemmer or Shannon can attest to that. But I'm going to post in the chat some 20 new ideas that you can try with your kids this summer. If you aren't familiar with PBS Parents, it's a really helpful website to, I just want to make sure you guys all get this. It's a really helpful website to kind of help get your kids moving and give you new ideas and fresh ideas and how to talk to your children on their level. So I think if you can get creative as much as you can, those are the types of things that you want to be doing with your kids. So go outside, be inside, play games. My family has started playing games more than ever. And as silly as it sounds, Monopoly is very engaging for a first grade going in. I have a rising first grader and he's like, Mom, why are we in school? But we're not in school. He has to add the dice together. He has to count the money. He has to, put all these skills together. And I didn't realize it until we actually started playing. So, I mean, just something as simple as that can really help keep them sharp throughout the summer.
Yeah, and there's some great suggestions in the chat too that people are putting in. We made art and boxes in our driveway. We got a sprinkler attachment. So if you're not in the chat, you might want to check it out. I'm gonna turn this conversation around a little bit to, although I think all of this is related to mental health in many ways, but our family's mental health. I know we had a lot of questions come in about angry feelings, siblings that were fighting all the time, outbursts that resulted in hitting and throwing things. None of this seemed foreign to me at all. I know that there's a shortage of patience in a lot of homes. And I think there's a national case of cabin fever, right? Like, we love our families. It might just be possible to see too much of them. I don't know. I'm curious, Tamar, What kinds of issues are you seeing? What's been coming up?
All those things in my home. No. Yeah, I think, listening to all of the really helpful and sensitive suggestions that everybody was making, I just thought, let's zoom out for a second and say that parenting, raising children is hard. It's wonderful and it's hard no matter what. And so, it's going to be that much more challenging in this time, which is why we're all here in these boxes talking. But I think it's important to keep that perspective, including, what you were saying, Colleen, about when we were talking about going outside, and the thought zoomed up to the top of my mind, which was, well, you just say it's outside time now. Even before the pandemic, we did have rules somewhat about, bedtime, brushing your teeth, things that kids don't want to do, but we expect that they're going to do them. And so I think, though we're all worn out and, emotionally strained, that just to remember that we do need to kind of keep expectations flexibly, but still we need to use those skills that we have, because kids, as much as they'll complain about these things, they're looking to us for that structure. That's just how it goes. So yeah, so I'm hearing about all different age groups, but certainly for this discussion, parents of young kids just being so worn down by having to entertain 24/7, having to, and the hard thing, and I think, Craig, you had said this at one point about, it's kind of like you're there if you're working from home, but you're not really available to your children. And so that's a new-ish, certainly intensified challenge emotionally for everybody, because kids are upset that they don't have access, and parents feel bad saying, I can't write, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So and that's just the workaday world right now. So though that sounds like a gloomy picture, people are, find ways of making this work. I think that the clincher, we were talking earlier about, kind of snippets of educational experiences in a 15-minute unit, that small amounts of different activities that kids can do. I actually, in the chat, I think you'll see, I scribbled, because we are in pandemic time, I scribbled some ideas which might appear backwards to you, but let me just, for the general idea, that if you can sit with your children, let's say of any age, and write in categories of what you want to have in your day. So I have in this example, some kids, when school's over, they don't want to hear the word school or education. So you can use mind expansion instead as a category. So mind expansion might be a category, creativity, fun, move your body, and common good, helping out around the house. And so let's say you generate with your family, what are the categories of your day? And then you can create sort of a mini structure of, maybe each day your kids are going to say, well, we want to do, you could write each of those categories on a piece of paper, an index card. And then your kids, if you can make pictures, if they're not readers yet, your kids can say which 2 things they want to do before lunch, which 2 activities they want to do after lunch. If there are choices that you can give them, they're going to have more buy-in if they're getting to choose. It helps, Shannon, you were talking about a little trickery, goes a long way. Right before a meal, right before a natural transition, that's a good time to sneak in something. 15 minutes of reading, and then we'll sit down to lunch. 10 minutes of clean sweep cleaning up around the house, and then we sit down to dinner. So these are survival skills for all of us. So, having a structure is a flexible structure is an important tool. But I would also say one of the really important tools for parents in this time, I think, is knowing that our kids are going to be unhappy and disappointed sometime. They were before too. They were before the pandemic. Now our hearts hurt from what's going on. So it can feel more difficult to know how to respond. But in a way, the responses are the same. It can help to, your child's upset and you say, you empathize. You start with your empathy foot. You lead with that to say, I know this is a really hard time, or I know you're feeling really sad right now, or you're having that nothing feels good right now feeling. I know that feeling too. I have that too sometimes. So just how do we survive emotionally is making room for the idea that there will be happiness playing Monopoly and scavenger hunts and going for walks, and there will be unhappiness when you can't go and play with your friend, or you can't go, to the playground or something like that. And to just try as much as possible, parents, not to take on that idea that kids, I'm going to sound like a curmudgeon, boy, but kids can't be happy all the time. That is a normal expectation, that kids are going to be disappointed and unhappy some of the time. And so if we're not fighting against that, that helps us to be more flexible and loving and free to just join our kids in what they're talking about. And a lot of times they just need to be heard. And then you pull out a book, or you say, do you want to go have a snack? And then you move on. They have been heard.
So that's great. That's freeing, right? That kids don't have to be happy all the time.
I hope you put that in the right spirit. Of course, we want to be happy a lot.
Now, how do you make my kids happy all the time? So there is this other question about kids' happiness, which is that they don't have much of a life outside of their families right now. We had this question that came in: will my child be negatively affected by not interacting with other kids? Somebody else said, my 7-year-old grandson is the only child in a house with 2 parents and me. He really misses his friends, right? We've been social distancing. I think these are 2 questions here. One is, are there real effects from kids being away from their friends? And then, maybe this is a question back to Shannon and Colleen, but what are ways that kids can get together and still interact with each other to mitigate some of those effects? So first, Tamar, is this something that we should be concerned about, that our kids are lonely?
Well, absolutely. I think this is, you said this is a national cabin fever situation, and it's a national loneliness experience too, for every age group in a different way. And so to an extent, I would say, yes, we have to be concerned about it. We can't be unaware of it. It's sort of impossible not to see that. But at the same time, how, worry is never the answer. It's the first response, but it's never the answer. So we are going to feel worried about that. But I think, being able to put in perspective as much as possible, controlling what we can right now for that 7-year-old. Are there things that, that child, are there experiences that can, they won't substitute, but they will be some way of working on their emotional growth, whether, it's through the play with you, with the parent, or it's reading about other kids and their emotional experiences through reading a storybook. So I also think the same way that Shannon and Lori, I think we're talking about just summer slide issues. To me, I think emotionally that if we can stay in not too stressed a mode as much as possible, not worry about what our kids have lost as much as we just try to focus on what we can control now, then I think our kids will be in much better shape to quickly kind of accelerate the learning, emotional learning, educational learning, when their activities resume or change, hopefully in the fall.
Yeah, and I know that there's a wide variety of interpretation on social distancing guidelines. I think that there are some kids who are very much in their homes. There are some kids who are doing outdoor play dates. I think that there's some kids have formed pods with other families, and I think there's probably a big range of the way that families are handling these things. But Shannon or Colleen, do you have any tips for safe ways that maybe kids can get together and experience some sort of fellowship?
I don't have any tips about getting together because I'm one of those people that I am fine with staying in the house and then just leaving to go to the grocery store and coming back. But I think it's very important that you have a conversation on your child's level so that they can understand why we are doing what we're doing right now. It's for their safety. Literally, their world stopped. Our school closed on March the 13th. So all of that interaction with 30 other classmates ceased. And you were told 2 weeks, and then that 2 weeks turns into 6 months. So just the conversation between parent and child so that they understand the importance of why we're doing what we're doing. And nothing that scares them, but just so that they can understand. We're not just staying in the house because I want you to stay in the house, but it's best for their safety at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so we recently had our first play date last week, to be quite honest. My son has been, he does have 2 younger siblings, but he has definitely been missing out on friends. And granted, at kindergarten, being the kindergarten level, he's going into 1st grade, it's being social with other kids and just to talk to another 6-year-old. 6-year-old conversation is totally different than a parent-child conversation, or even conversation with his 4-year-old sister. It's different. And we did have an outside play date. Thankfully, we do have a backyard where they could play. So they stayed outside, they played, and he was here for about 2 hours, and you could see the happiness on both of their faces just by simply being together, playing outside. And I think it was something that it was very euphoric in our house. It was very strange to have someone else over. My kids were excited. They were like totally excited, and it was just kind of like, and it was only like 2 hours, and then that was that. But you could just see a huge difference because he has been very moody lately, and I don't know. I feel bad for all of my children. Our 1-year-old is in heaven because everyone's here all the time, so he's happy. But the rest of us are like missing our things. But so we did. Depending on your comfort level, we did do a play date. We had 1 child over, and I will say it just like it did change a mood, and we went out and we had fun, and then bada bing, bada boom, he was gone. And then it's like, when can we do it again? Well, let's see. Like, and it's a matter of finding, I guess, a fellow parent or talking to them and seeing what their comfort level is, because I've been trying to say this to my children this whole time, that every family right now is more unique than ever, because of their home situation, because of their parent situation, because everything, when they're all at school, they can kind of be on even playing ground, and everybody's situation is so different. So I think to understand that it's very hard for them to understand, obviously, but just to know, like, everybody's going through something different right now, and we can see if someone's comfortable, and if they're not, they're not. You can't hold that against them, but if they are, that's great. And I mean, it just depends on your comfort level. Sorry, I'm rambling.
We have about 15 minutes. No, it's great. Thank you. I would like to say that we are not nobody on here is a public health person, but there is a balance, right, between staying healthy physically and staying healthy mentally, and I think that's probably why you see families making all different kinds of choices. I do want to remind people that you could put questions in the chat if you have further questions. We have about 15 minutes left. I certainly have enough questions to fill this time, but I want to make sure that we get to yours too. If you submitted a question ahead of time and we haven't gotten to it, feel free to resubmit it. My next question for you, Tamar, is that this is like, I mean, everybody says, right, that 2020 is the craziest year, of our lives, and there's a lot of big things happening, right? There is this virus where our reaction to the virus is big. There's this police brutality that has been, on the news, for a long time, but even more so now. And I think in some people's lives, it's just a fact of life. And then there's the very public reaction to the police brutality. And then there's this election coming up. And I think, for a lot of people, a lot's going to seem to hinge on this election. And I think that parents are on edge, and kids are getting snippets of things. And how do you talk to kids about big things? And do you have to, do you talk to them about it on their level? Do you leave things out? Do you, if you have a kid like mine who won't stop asking questions because he needs the full picture, how do you handle that? How do you talk to kids about big things?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Shannon, I'm reading your mind a little bit. I don't know if it's right, but I really appreciate what you were saying about explaining things to kids at their level. They need to understand at the level. So the easiest part of the answer is yes, at their developmental level. But kids need to understand the why of things to the extent that they're able to process, because that is part of how we grow and learn and are good, engaged citizens and people of agency in life. What's a good starting point, I think, is, asking kids what they know about something. Now, there may be a little bit less of what they know these days because they have less interaction, but maybe not, so certainly going there. But I think, as I've been saying throughout, that these times bring out the emergency feeling in all of us, but talking about really important life events it's a crisis, but not an emergency. So we got to pace ourselves. If we're just scared when we talk to our kids won't hear anything. They'll read our faces and they'll know, I need to be scared because she's scared, because he's scared. So take your time, do small snippets at a time. Always, how do we all cope? How did we all get here today? And we're all, dressed, and our computers are mostly working, although I just got a signal that mine was not working a few minutes ago. I'm sorry about that. But how do we stay resilient is we have to have a sense of hopefulness and hope, which is a very active kind of thing that we have to work on. So you're balancing the picture of what you're sharing with your children with what does it mean in their world? What are things that, how does it affect them? What are things that they can do to be active in solving problems, in helping people? Always end, what other way can we go, people, right? I think we're all on the same page on the panel, in the audience, that we believe in change. We believe in, the potential for growth. And so we have to bring that to our conversations with our kids. Take your time. Don't think about your reason for what you're talking about. What is, are you focusing on safety, or are you focusing on risk? Always focus on kind of safety rules, what they can use to, to help themselves to feel a sense of safety. So though the picture is mixed, that you really want your message to be, even if it's that these are really hard times and these are hard situations, this is what we can do. Sometimes the hard feelings feel like too much, but other times not. And this is what we can do.
Shannon, do you want to add to that? I'm sure that you've had conversations with kids over the years. Is there something you want to add to how you handle them?
Well, before a majority of our classes, we did a zone of regulation check-in. And if you're not familiar with that, there's literally 4 columns. One color is blue. There's one that's red, yellow, and green. And my children had to look at the color and then pick an attribute from the color. So under blue, it might have been tired. Red would have been angry. Yellow was surprised. And maybe green was I'm feeling okay. So if you could say I'm feeling blue and I'm tired, then we talked about it. Well, why are you tired? Well, I stayed up playing Fortnite all last night. Okay, well, I understand that. Now, what can we do so that you don't stay at blue? Oh, well, I can go to bed at 10 o'clock instead of 11 o'clock. So I think understanding how they feel, getting your child to articulate their feelings about what they understand will be helpful not only to you because you can see how they feel because they've told you why they feel that way. And then you can get them to say, how can they change it so that you're not always blue?
Yeah. Lori, there's been some questions in the chat that I see you're answering. And so maybe we could answer them out loud. One question was, do you have any ideas for low-income families who are struggling to get supplies and cannot always step outside for numerous reasons?
Yeah, so one of the things that I noticed I have a 5-year-old grandson who's at home with just 2 parents, no siblings. So I have noticed that he is very much taken control of his own time. Like, if mom and dad are doing their work, then he's 5 and he's left to kind of figure it out, right? For a little times here and times there. So to watch him use his imagination. So luckily we were able to, after about a month of the quarantine, we took him for a week and had him here. And we don't have a lot of toys. I mean, we have some things, but we don't have a ton for him to. And he just went outside and was picking up sticks and making things, right? And telling us what he was making and what was happening with the sticks. And I mean, kids don't have to have a lot of material things to play with. Find whatever is available. And I was just mentioning, building forts with blankets in the house and letting your child create their own space and letting them tell a story about what happens in that space and, what adventures they're going to have in that space and letting them write about it. Letting them use your phone to record a story on it and then listen to it back again, right? And then talk about it. It doesn't have to always be organized activities. Let them have time to create and use their imagination and figure out that, I'm going to have to entertain myself for a little while, give them some suggestions, some things that they could do, and give them time to do it. And now he actually will say to you, if it's too much commotion around, he'll say, I need to go have my alone time. Now, he has learned that he kind of likes that. Mm-hmm. Even though he's a very social kid, he likes his alone time as we do as adults too, right? So
so I think we have time for one more question. I have a question for each of you. I've been in a lot of conversations recently where people are talking about how the way we do things now are going to change the way we do things forever, right? Like this distance learning that we're doing now is going to, be this. And I'm always like, no, don't do that. That's bad. I don't want more distance learning. I don't want my family life and my work life to be more enmeshed. I like it the way things were. But I'm wondering, are there things that you see happening now that you would want to continue? what sort of changes in behavior that you've seen in these past few months would you like to see continue into the future? And I see that Shannon has unmuted herself, and I'm going to take that as a cue that she is answering first.
Well, we were kind of forced into this change. So, and change is good. I think some of the positive changes that people will actually appreciate the time that you spent at home with your families, because kids will maybe not remember why they were home for 6 months. That's hopefully after that will be out, but they'll remember all the activities that you did during that time. Remember that time we built a fort in the backyard? You know, it wasn't, oh, I was stuck in a house and we built a fort. So I think the quarantine has been good for building the family time, appreciating each other, and being more creative and finding ways to actually entertain yourself.
All right. Who wants to go next? Tamar? Nothing.
Well, the first thing that came to my mind is just that an appreciation of how important it is that we take care of each other.
Yeah.
So, you know, mask wearing and all the other precautions that we need to take, we can't avoid the idea. It's right literally in our faces that how we survive and thrive as a community, as a global community, that we're all connected, is that we have that awareness of each other and take care of each other. So this is the hardest way to go through that lesson, but let's really learn it.
Colleen, you got something?
So I guess what I'm most happy to take away from all of this is I think we will undoubtedly come out of this stronger than we were when we went in. And, you know, if there's a struggle, you're going to come out of it, you know, maybe feeling a little defeated, but in the grand scheme of things, you are going to know that you made it through, and you've made it through that time, and you made it through it together with your family, spending all that time together. And I think this is going to sound silly, and granted, it's not always cupcakes and rainbows over here all the time. But I do think my children have bonded with each other, and I am thankful for that, because, you know, before this, one was at school all day, two were at home and they were bonding. Granted, one went to preschool, but they're all here. And to see my 6-year-old bonding with my 1.5-year-old, I think that they have, their relationships have grown and have come together. And it's like, oh, he's not just a baby. He can actually communicate, even if it's just like in weird, funny words and hand signals. But I think that that's what I'm most happy to come out of this with. So,
Lori?
So I can't believe I'm going to say this, but cooking and family mealtime, right? I feel like that has been something that we didn't do much of before, and we're doing all the time now. I mean, I'm certainly going to like a restaurant occasionally here and there, but so much more the relaxed pace and just being able to sit down and eat together has been really just conversation and having that time to just talk to one another rather than just moving from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. I
think for me, I am way more, for better or worse, way more in tune to my family's emotions than I was before. I think that, you know, when you're with them all the time, you need to understand them better. And I think that understanding is going to last, I think, and I think it will be for the best. And so I think that is all the time we have. Love your kids, right? Love them.
Love your kids.
They're loud. They may seem ungrateful at times, but they love you. Love them back. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.